You are not trapped by life, you are trapped by the way you think while life happens. Right now, your mind is reacting faster than your reason, and every reaction is shaping the person you are becoming. What lies ahead in this video is not comfort but clarity. It will show how your judgments create your suffering and how your freedom has always depended on what you choose to accept and what you choose to reject within yourself. You will be asked to look directly at your daily thoughts, your silent excuses, and the way you hand control to things you cannot govern. If you are willing to live with that level of honesty, stay here and go deeper. If you want to begin training the mind instead of being ruled by it, subscribe and stay with this work as part of a serious community built on reason, discipline, and inner truth. What follows is a guide to taking your mind back from itself. Number 1. Confront your excuses before they become your permanent prison. Stop and look at yourself without mercy. Not the version you show others, not the version you defend in your mind, the real one. The one that keeps postponing what must be done and calls it patience. The one that keeps avoiding discomfort and calls it wisdom. The one that keeps feeding weakness and calls it personality. This is where change begins. Not in comfort, not in applause, not in the opinions of other people. Change begins when you admit that many of the chains on your life were not placed there by fate, but forged by your own repeated excuses. Every day you delay the work of self-rule, you strengthen the prison walls. Every time you say tomorrow when you know the truth today, you make the lie harder to break. A man is not trapped because the world is cruel. He is trapped because he has grown familiar with his own surrender. You do not need a better world to begin. You need a more honest mind. The true battle is never against circumstances first. It is against the false judgments you make about those circumstances. You look at your failures and say the task is too hard. You look at discipline and say you are too tired. You look at your own weakness and say this is just who you are. But what are these statements except judgments? And what are judgments except choices? The mind does not suffer because events are severe. It suffers because it keeps adding fear and complaint to what happens. The event is one thing. Your opinion about it is another. The first may not be in your hands. The second always is. If you can see this clearly, then you are already standing at the gate of freedom. If you cannot see it, then every difficulty will continue to rule you. Most excuses are not honest reports. They are attempts to escape the pain of self-command. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right time. You are not. You are waiting to feel less resistance. You tell yourself you need more confidence. You do not. You need more action. You tell yourself others make it impossible. They do not. They merely make it harder. Hard is not impossible. Uncomfortable is not unjust. Slow is not hopeless. What weak people call a reason to stop is often only a reason to begin with greater discipline. The soul grows not when life becomes easy, but when it refuses to kneel before difficulty. If you keep asking for a path without resistance, you are asking for a life without character. That life does not exist. The world offers strain. Your duty is to answer with reason. You must learn to distrust the mind when it begs for delay. The mind that has not been trained will always invent noble-sounding excuses for surrender. It will say you need more rest when you really need more resolve. It will say you must protect your peace when you are only avoiding what would strengthen you. It will say this one time will not matter while it quietly teaches your character to accept defeat. No single indulgence destroys a life, but repeated indulgence teaches the soul to bow. The danger is not only the action, the danger is the lesson you teach yourself through the action. Each excuse becomes a vote for the weaker self. Each act of avoidance becomes a rehearsal of cowardice. Each moment of honest resistance becomes a rehearsal of freedom. Look closely at what you call your personality. Many things you have accepted as fixed are only habits repeated long enough to feel natural. You say you are impatient, then train patience. You say you are disorganized, then order your day. You say you are easily angered, then pause before speaking. You say you cannot stay disciplined, then stop speaking about discipline and start performing it in small acts. Character is not a mystery hidden from you. It is made visible in the choices you repeat when no one is watching. You are not condemned to remain as you are, but you are responsible for becoming what you claim you value. No one can do this work for you. No one can think in your place. No one can choose virtue for you. No one can endure the first hard hours for you. The burden is yours, and so is the power. The first act of transformation is to separate what is up to you from what is not. This is not a slogan, it is a discipline. Your body may be weak today. The weather may be harsh. The people around you may be careless. Your past may be heavy. Your opportunities may be limited. These things are real, but whether you complain about them or work within them is still up to you. Whether you meet them with laziness or with reason is still up to you. Whether you become bitter or steady is still up to you. This division must become your daily map. If you spend your strength trying to control the winds, you will have no strength left to steer your ship. If you direct your attention to your own judgments, your own actions, your own choices, your own refusal to lie to yourself, then you will find there is far more power in you than you thought. The excuse often begins with a feeling. You feel tired and conclude you cannot act. You feel afraid and conclude the task is not for you. You feel uncertain and conclude you must wait. But feeling is not command. Feeling is a passing condition. A rational human being does not bow before every feeling that appears. He examines it. He asks whether it is true. He asks whether it deserves obedience. He asks whether it helps virtue or weakens it. If you let every feeling become a law, then you have surrendered the throne of your mind to whatever noise passes through it. That is no life. That is captivity dressed as sensitivity. The disciplined person does not deny feeling. He refuses to be governed by it. He knows that impulses are not orders and moods are not masters. There is a hard truth you must face. Many people do not fear failure as much as they fear responsibility. Failure can be blamed on chance. Responsibility leaves nowhere to hide. If you admit that your life is shaped by your judgments, then you can no longer comfort yourself with excuses that make you innocent and powerless. That is why the work of self-examination is painful. It removes the alibi. It takes away the soft lie that someone else is chiefly to blame. Yet this pain is medicine. To be exposed to the truth is better than to live sheltered inside a lie. The mind that refuses correction remains weak. The mind that can endure correction becomes strong. Therefore, do not protect your self-image at the expense of your character. Your image will fade. Your character will remain as the only thing that truly belongs to you. Begin today with a simple practice. Before you do anything else in the morning, sit still for a few moments and ask yourself what kind of person you intend to be, not what you intend to accomplish, not what others may think of you. What kind of person? Ask whether you will meet the day as a slave to comfort or as a servant of reason. Ask which actions today will be worthy of a human being. Ask where your excuses will appear most strongly and decide now that they will not be obeyed. This is not positive thinking, it is preparation. A soul that expects resistance is less easily surprised by it. A mind that names its likely weaknesses in advance is already beginning to govern them. When the day starts and the old habits come knocking, you will not be meeting them as an unprepared man. You will have already declared your intention. When the excuse appears in the hour of action, do not negotiate with it. Negotiation is often surrender in slow form. You know the pattern. You say you will start after one more message, after one more rest, after one more distraction, after one more look at the phone, after one more cigarette, after one more excuse. But every added delay lowers the mind further into softness. Interrupt the chain at once. Stand up, wash your face, open the book, make the call, write the page, begin the task, perform the duty. The mind often resists the beginning more than the doing. Once action starts, the soul remembers its own strength. The first victory is over inertia. The second is over complaint. The third is over the old identity that insisted change was impossible. Do not wait to feel worthy. Worthiness is not a feeling. It is the result of acting in accordance with virtue. A man becomes worthy through justice in his dealings, through courage in his trials, through self-control in his desires, through wisdom in his judgments. These are not decorative ideas. They are the structure of a life that does not collapse under pressure. Every excuse attacks one of these four foundations. Excuses make you less honest because they hide the truth. They make you less just because they make you careless toward your duties. They make you less courageous because they teach you to retreat from what is difficult. They make you less self-controlled because they grant pleasure authority over principle. If you wish to transform yourself, then you must defend these four foundations every day, not once. Not when it is convenient, every day. Think of the many times you have said your situation prevents you from growing. Yet, is there ever a situation that prevents a man from choosing his own mind? There may be poverty and illness and conflict and rejection and failure. These can wound the body and strain the nerves, but they do not force the soul to abandon virtue unless the soul consents. That consent is the real injury. A person may be surrounded by hardship and still remain free if he governs his judgments. Another may live in comfort and still be a slave if he cannot govern himself. The difference is not what they possess, the difference is what commands them. One is ruled by reason, the other by appetite. One can be called poor and remain rich in character. The other may be called successful and still be inwardly ruined. You must stop treating your weaknesses as if they deserve endless sympathy. Sympathy has its place when suffering is real, but when you are merely repeating the same indulgences and calling them wounds, you are not helping yourself. You are preserving the disease. There is a kind of tenderness that weakens the soul because it never demands anything of it. There is another kind that strengthens because it refuses to lie. Be tender enough to understand your struggle. Be strict enough to overcome it. Tell yourself the truth plainly. You are not as helpless as you pretend. You are not as broken as your excuses suggest. You are not as trapped as the part of you that loves delay wants you to believe. You have choices. You have a mind. You have the ability to pause before acting. You have the ability to refuse one more lie. Use it. The undisciplined mind thrives on stories. It tells itself stories of unfairness, stories of special difficulty, stories of future rescue, stories of one day when everything will become easier and then effort will feel natural. That day is not promised. The present is what you are given. Therefore, stop living in imagined conditions and face the one condition that matters now. What judgment are you entertaining right now? What action is before you right now? What duty is waiting right now? What weakness is asking to be indulged right now? Do not drift through the day in a fog of general intentions. Particularize your struggle. Name the exact habit that keeps you small. Name the exact excuse it uses. Name the exact moment when you tend to fold. Then meet that moment with a chosen response. A life changes not through vague wishes, but through precise correction. If your excuse is fear of other people, then remember that what disturbs you is not their opinion, but your opinion about their opinion. Someone may laugh. Someone may disagree. Someone may judge you unfairly. None of this can harm your character unless you hand over your judgment to them. Their thoughts are theirs. Your duty is yours. If your excuse is fear of failure, then remember that failing at a worthy action is not disgrace. Refusing the worthy action is disgrace. If your excuse is exhaustion, then examine honestly whether this is real bodily need or merely a softened habit. Rest when rest is required. But do not use rest as a mask for avoidance. If your excuse is past damage, then do not deny the wound, but do not worship it either. What happened to you may explain your habits. It does not absolve you from changing them. To confront excuses is also to confront the hunger for immediate comfort. The soul becomes weak when it demands that every task be pleasant before it will obey. But the good life has never been built by those who only act when the path is easy. A human being was made for work worthy of reason, not frantic work, not empty busyness, not ambition without character. Work that shapes the soul, work that strengthens virtue, work that meets necessity with dignity. You were not born to be managed by your impulses. You were born to direct them. You were not born to chase every comfort. You were born to test your strength against reality. Each time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you make yourself more human. Each time you choose the easier wrong, you make yourself less. There is also an excuse called waiting for clarity. You tell yourself you cannot begin until you understand everything, but complete clarity often comes after action, not before it. A rational person does not demand that life remove all uncertainty before he behaves well. He acts well within uncertainty. He accepts that some things are hidden and still does his duty. This is the nature of courage. If every step were perfectly clear, then courage would not be required. But virtue is tested in obscurity. When the road is not fully visible, the task is to keep your direction straight. Stay with what is noble, stay with what is just, stay with what is under your control. The rest will unfold as it must. Your part is not to know all outcomes. Your part is to remain faithful to reason. You should also examine the way you speak when you explain your own failures. Many of your words are not explanations but protections. You say you were busy when you mean you were uncommitted. You say you forgot when you mean you did not care enough to remember. You say it is not the right time when you mean you fear the cost. Speak plainly to yourself. Plain speech is a moral discipline. A man who lies lightly to himself will soon lie heavily to others. The first corruption of character is often not a grand betrayal, but a small convenience in language. Make your words match reality. If you wasted the day, say you wasted it. If you avoided the task, say you avoided it. If you acted with courage, say so. This honesty cuts through self-deception. It is a sharp blade, but a healing one. When you face an excuse and refuse it, you will feel resistance. That is normal. The old self does not yield quietly. The part of you that has been fed by comfort will complain when its supply is cut off. Do not be alarmed by this. Do not confuse resistance with a sign that you are doing harm to yourself. Often it is the sign that you are stopping the harm. The soul that has been spoiled will cry out when correction begins. Hold firm. A child resents discipline before he benefits from it. So does the undisciplined mind. But you are not required to remain childish. You can endure the protest and continue. This is what self-rule looks like. Not the absence of inner friction, but the refusal to let friction decide. Build your day around acts that are difficult enough to matter, but simple enough to repeat. Wake at the time you said you would. Make your bed. Clean the space around you. Begin the most important work before the mind scatters. Finish the thing you started. Speak truth even when it is uncomfortable. Stop yourself before the pointless complaint leaves your mouth. Put away the device when attention is needed. Return to the task when wandering begins. Keep your promises to yourself in small things, because the soul learns trust through repetition. If you betray yourself in little matters, do not expect strength in great ones. The will is trained by what it repeatedly permits. Therefore, make your daily discipline severe where it should be severe, and simple where it should be simple. There is no nobility in complexity for its own sake. There is nobility in reliable self-command. At some point you must decide whether you will keep living as a spectator of your own life or as the governing mind within it. The spectator watches his habits with a helpless shrug. He knows what is wrong. He sees the pattern. He names the problem. Then he does nothing. The governing mind does not live this way. It observes itself in order to correct itself. It does not merely analyze pain. It acts against what causes pain. It does not merely understand the chains. It breaks them. There is no virtue in endless self-awareness if it does not lead to change. The point of examination is not self-absorption. The point is self-command. Look into yourself so that you may become trustworthy to yourself. Look into yourself so that you may stop being ruled by what you already know is harmful. You will be tempted to think that transformation requires a new identity, a grand moment, or a dramatic turn. It does not. It requires repeated refusals. Refuse the first excuse. Refuse the second. Refuse the story that says you are different from what you choose. Refuse the lie that your emotions are your destiny. Refuse the luxury of self-pity. Refuse the habit of giving yourself a pass for the very behaviors you condemn in others. There is a fierce kind of peace that comes from no longer betraying yourself. When the mind stops making bargains with weakness, it becomes simpler. Simplicity is not emptiness, it is order. The ordered soul no longer wastes strength on internal arguments. It knows its duty and does it. Remember that your life is built in hours, and hours are built in choices. Do not dismiss a single choice as too small to matter. A life of discipline is nothing more than many small choices made well. A life of drift is many small choices surrendered. The scale of the decision does not determine the truth of its effect. The repeated small indulgence becomes character. The repeated small restraint becomes character. The repeated excuse becomes a way of life. The repeated refusal of excuses becomes freedom. This is why you must be strict with the first moments of weakness. The first lie must be met with truth. The first delay with action. The first complaint with silence. The first desire for comfort with measured endurance. If you are severe at the beginning, you may save yourself years of regret. There is strength in accepting limits, but not in surrendering to them without examination. You may not be able to make yourself perfect today. You may not erase every habit by sunset. You may not rebuild your mind in 1 hour, but you can begin now. And beginning now matters more than regretting yesterday. Do not let the scale of the work frighten you into inaction. The whole road is walked one step at a time. The whole character is formed one judgment at a time. The whole prison is weakened one honest refusal at a time. You are not required to finish the life in a day. You are required to begin the work in this one. If your excuse is that others have done worse to you, then remember that their wrongdoing does not command your response. It can wound, it can constrain, it can leave scars, but it does not define what your own mind must become. The person who is wronged still has a duty to himself, to remain just in spirit, to avoid becoming like what he resists, and to keep his own inner citadel uncorrupted. Do not allow the injuries of others to become the excuse for your own surrender. You cannot control what was done. You can control whether it becomes the model for your own conduct. That choice is yours. Guard it carefully. If your excuse is that you have tried before and failed, then do not be ashamed of failure. Be ashamed of repeating it without learning. Failure can instruct a man. Repeated blindness cannot. Ask where you broke down. Ask what judgment failed. Ask what comfort you preferred over duty. Ask what situation exposed your weakness. Then adjust, not with drama, with precision. The wise person is not one who never falls. He is one who studies the fall and becomes harder to overthrow. In this way, even failure becomes a servant of virtue. The same event that once fed despair can become the teacher that strengthens resolve. Nothing is wasted in a disciplined mind, except the refusal to learn. Evening is the hour for truth. At the end of the day, do not reach for distraction immediately. Sit with your actions, review them without theater, ask what you did well, ask where you yielded, ask where you blamed, ask where you acted from reason and where you acted from impulse. Ask whether you were just, ask whether you were moderate, ask whether you were brave, ask whether you were wise. Do not allow yourself vague approval. Do not allow yourself vague condemnation. Be exact. Exactness brings freedom because it removes confusion. If you made progress, acknowledge it. If you failed, correct it. Then set the intention for tomorrow before sleep closes the day. This habit alone can change a life, for a man who examines himself daily cannot lie to himself forever. The truth catches up with him and remakes him. There is nothing weak about asking more of yourself. Weakness is the refusal to ask. Weakness is the acceptance of decline as identity. Strength is the opposite. Strength says, I will not be ruled by what is lower in me. Strength says, I am capable of training my judgments. Strength says, I can endure the pain of correction for the sake of a better self. Strength says, I will not trade the health of my soul for a moment of ease. This is the language of a free human being. Not inflated pride, not self-congratulation. Calm command. If you speak to yourself in this way often enough, the soul begins to answer. It becomes less noisy, less frightened, less eager to escape, more steady, more capable of duty, more ready to live. Do not imagine that your transformation must be visible to others in order to be real. The deepest changes are often silent. A man can become freer long before anyone notices. He begins to interrupt his impulses. He begins to let insult pass without surrendering reason. He begins to work when he would rather drift. He begins to tell himself the truth before the day can soften into excuses. He begins to carry hardship without making a spectacle of it. He begins to live for virtue rather than for comfort. These changes may look small from outside. They are not small within. They are the foundation of an unshakable life. You must also remember that virtue does not mean harshness toward all things. It means proper judgment toward all things. There is a time to rest, a time to speak, a time to be silent, a time to move, a time to endure, a time to step back from what is not yours to control, a time to engage fully in what is. Excuses blur these distinctions. Virtue clarifies them. When you know what belongs to you and what does not, you stop wasting energy on the impossible and stop neglecting the possible. This is one of the great reliefs of Stoic practice. It does not promise that everything will go your way. It promises that your mind need not go astray even when things do not. The day will come when your excuses no longer sound convincing because you will have listened to them long enough to know their emptiness. They always promise relief and deliver weakness. They always promise protection and deliver bondage. They always promise a safer path and deliver a smaller life. Do not wait until you are old to discover that you have been living beneath your ability. Do not wait until loss or regret sharpens your mind. Start now while strength still remains to be used. Start now while the habits can still be changed. Start now while your life is still being written by the hand that holds it. Every day you delay writes the same chapter again. Every day you act writes a different one. You are not here to drift through your days. You are here to govern yourself. That is a serious task, and there is no dignity in pretending otherwise. The world will not stop demanding things of you. People will not stop testing your patience. Events will not stop challenging your control. Your mind will not stop offering easy lies, but neither will your reason stop being available. Neither will your power to choose stop existing. Neither will your capacity for virtue disappear unless you abandon it. The choice remains. This is the great burden and the great honor of being human. You can live as one more person driven by habit and comfort, or you can live as one who has looked at his own weakness and decided that it will not rule him anymore. So ask yourself now with complete honesty, what excuse have you protected too long? What duty have you avoided because you preferred the comfort of delay? What action have you already known was right but refused to take? What habit has grown because you kept feeding it with attention and mercy that were never deserved? Look at these things without dramatizing them and without hiding from them. Then do the one thing excuses hate. Act. Not tomorrow, not after you feel ready, not after the mood changes. Now. Make the call, begin the work, end the scrolling, stand up, return to the task, apologize where you must, clean what you neglected, study what you avoided, train what you let weaken, speak truth where you have been evasive, choose what is right because it is right. The life you want is not hidden behind some grand future, it is hidden behind the next honest choice. The prison you fear is not only outside you, it is maintained by every false excuse you continue to accept. Therefore, break the agreement. Refuse the old bargain. Stop calling weakness by softer names. Stop arranging your life around what is easiest. Stop waiting for the self you admire to appear by magic. Become that self through action. Become that self through practice. Become that self through the daily discipline of saying no to what degrades you and yes to what strengthens you. Let this be the last day your excuses speak louder than your reason. Let this be the day you stop defending what keeps you small. Let this be the day you accept the hard dignity of self-command. No one else can do it for you. No one else can think for you. No one else can choose for you. No one else can carry the authority of your own soul. That task belongs to you alone, and because it belongs to you alone, it is also your path to freedom. Walk it. Now. Number 2. Accept only what lies within your complete control today. Stop for one moment and ask yourself a question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. How much of your suffering comes from reality, and how much comes from demanding that reality obey your wishes? This question is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to uncover the place where your freedom has been quietly abandoned. Every restless night spent replaying conversations, every hour wasted worrying about tomorrow, every burst of anger because another person refused to become who you wanted them to be. Every disappointment that lingered long after the event had ended. Look carefully and you will discover one pattern beneath them all. Your attention has been invested in what was never yours to command. You have been trying to govern the minds of strangers while neglecting your own. You have been trying to predict outcomes that have not yet arrived while failing to guide the judgment that exists in this very moment. You have been measuring your peace by events that move according to causes far beyond your reach. Then you wonder why peace continues to escape you. The problem is not that life has denied you tranquility. The problem is that you have searched for tranquility in the one place where it can never be found. The disciplined life begins with a clear division. Some things belong to your authority, and some things never will. This is not an idea to admire. It is a rule that must govern every hour you live. Your thoughts are yours to examine. Your choices are yours to direct. Your intentions are yours to purify. Your actions are yours to perform with care. Beyond these stand countless things that move without asking your permission. Weather changes without consulting you. Other people form opinions without seeking your approval. Fortune arrives and departs without negotiating with your plans. Time continues its course, whether you welcome it or resist it. To confuse these two realms is to surrender your peace before the day has even begun. Notice what happens each morning before your feet touch the floor. Your mind begins reaching outward. It imagines conversations that have not happened. It worries about problems that have not appeared. It searches for certainty where certainty cannot be guaranteed. Before the day has even started, your attention has already abandoned the only territory where useful work can be done. A mind that races toward distant possibilities cannot faithfully perform today's responsibilities. It exhausts itself chasing shadows while neglecting the one task that stands directly before it. Instead, begin each morning with a quieter discipline. Sit in stillness before the demands of the world begin speaking. Ask yourself only one question: what belongs to me today? The answer is never another person's behavior. The answer is never the economy. The answer is never the praise or criticism that may come. The answer is always the same: your judgment, your conduct, your willingness to act with reason regardless of circumstances. If you begin every day by returning to these few possessions, you begin the day already richer than someone who owns everything except themselves. Many people believe they are disturbed by difficult events. Look more carefully. They are disturbed because they immediately attach a judgment to the event before examining whether that judgment deserves belief. An unexpected setback occurs, and the mind instantly declares everything ruined. A harsh word is spoken, and the mind concludes it has been deeply harmed. A plan fails, and the mind announces that failure has become identity. Yet none of these conclusions arrive from necessity. They are accepted with astonishing speed simply because the untrained mind mistakes its first reaction for truth. You must learn to interrupt this process. Between every event and every response there exists a small space that habit tries to erase. In that space your freedom remains untouched. That space is where reason speaks, if you have trained yourself to listen. Before accepting any impression, ask whether it deserves entrance into your mind. Ask whether it helps you live with justice. Ask whether it strengthens self-command. Ask whether it is supported by evidence or merely by emotion. Most unnecessary suffering enters the soul because no guard was standing at the gate. This practice is neither cold nor detached from ordinary life. Imagine someone speaks unfairly about you. The first movement inside you may be anger. That first movement appears without invitation. What follows belongs to you. Will you nurture resentment throughout the day, or will you examine the event with clarity? Did another person's words remove your ability to choose honesty? Did they prevent you from acting with patience? Did they force you to abandon self-respect? They did not. Their speech belongs to them. Your character belongs to you. If you surrender your peace because another person failed to govern themselves, then you have willingly handed your own government away. The same principle applies when success finally arrives. Praise can become another form of captivity if you allow it to dictate your value. The applause of others is as unstable as their criticism. Both rise and disappear according to forces outside your authority. If you build your identity upon either one, you have placed your happiness into hands that constantly change. Better to judge yourself by the quality of your choices than by the volume of approval surrounding them. Character remains when applause has faded. Virtue does not require witnesses. You may believe your greatest obstacle is the future, yet the future has never asked anything from you except today's preparation. Anxiety constantly invites you into imaginary conversations with events that do not yet exist. It promises safety through endless anticipation. Instead, it steals your ability to act wisely now. You cannot solve tomorrow's uncertainty today. You can only strengthen today's judgment, so that whatever tomorrow brings finds you ready rather than frightened. Every hour offers an opportunity to return to what belongs to you. When a delay interrupts your plans, remember that your schedule was never guaranteed. Your response remains available. When another person disappoints you, remember that their choices were never yours to direct. Your integrity remains available. When fortune changes unexpectedly, remember that possessions have always been temporary visitors. Your capacity for moderation remains available. Every circumstance removes something external while leaving your inner authority untouched, unless you abandon it yourself. There is also a quieter form of attachment that deserves examination. Many people become attached not only to outcomes, but to the image they have created of themselves. They become distressed whenever reality refuses to confirm that image. They need every conversation to prove they are respected. They need every achievement to prove they are valuable. They need every success to erase hidden insecurity. This burden becomes exhausting because reality was never designed to protect anyone's self-image. Release this demand. Let your concern be whether your actions deserve respect, rather than whether respect immediately appears. Practice reducing each problem to its simplest form. Instead of saying everything is falling apart, ask what has actually happened. Instead of saying life is unfair, ask what duty remains. Instead of saying nothing is working, ask what action still lies within your reach. The undisciplined mind speaks in exaggeration because exaggeration excuses helplessness. The disciplined mind speaks with precision because precision reveals responsibility. You will discover that much of your mental exhaustion comes from carrying responsibilities that were never assigned to you. You carry another person's opinion. You carry yesterday's mistakes after their lessons have already been learned. You carry imagined disasters that may never arrive. You carry the impossible task of making everyone understand you. Lay these burdens down. They were never signs of strength. They were signs of confusion. Strength begins when you refuse to lift what was never yours to carry. Throughout the day, establish moments of deliberate return. When you notice frustration beginning to rise, stop for a single breath. Ask yourself whether the disturbance concerns something within your authority or outside it. If it lies beyond your authority, release the demand that it become different before you regain your peace. If it lies within your authority, then stop complaining and begin acting. This simple question prevents countless hours of wasted emotional struggle because it directs energy toward useful effort instead of fruitless resistance. Do not mistake acceptance for passivity. Acceptance does not mean approving injustice or abandoning meaningful work. It means recognizing reality before choosing your response. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot respond wisely while insisting reality should already be different. First see clearly, then act where action belongs. Calm perception always comes before disciplined conduct. The habit of complaint deserves careful attention because it quietly weakens the mind. Complaint creates the illusion of action while avoiding genuine responsibility. Every unnecessary complaint teaches the soul to depend upon circumstances for contentment. Replace complaint with observation. Replace blame with examination. Replace resentment with purposeful action. The world owes you no special arrangement, yet every moment still offers the opportunity to respond with dignity. You will find that freedom grows through repetition rather than dramatic moments. Each time you refuse to chase what cannot be possessed, your judgment becomes steadier. Each time you return attention to your own conduct, your character becomes stronger. These victories often appear small. No audience applauds them. No celebration follows them. Yet they quietly reshape the foundation upon which an entire life stands. At the close of each day, sit alone without distraction. Review your thoughts before reviewing your accomplishments. Ask where your attention wandered beyond its rightful boundaries. Ask where you surrendered your peace to another person's choices. Ask where you remained faithful to reason despite difficulty. Do not condemn yourself when you discover failure. Failure, honestly examined, becomes instruction. Self-deception turns failure into habit. The purpose of reflection is correction rather than punishment. Over time, you will notice a remarkable change. Situations that once controlled your emotions lose their authority. Delays become opportunities for patience rather than irritation. Criticism becomes material for examination rather than injury. Success becomes a chance to practice humility rather than pride. Loss becomes a reminder of what was always temporary. None of these events have changed. What has changed is the government within your own mind. This is the quiet strength that cannot be purchased or borrowed. It grows each time you choose reason over impulse. It grows each time you refuse to demand certainty from an uncertain world. It grows each time you remember that your true possession has never been wealth or reputation or comfort, but the quality of your own judgment. Everything else arrives and departs according to causes beyond your command. Your character remains the one field entrusted entirely to your care. Do not postpone this discipline because you believe tomorrow will provide a better opportunity. Tomorrow offers no authority that today lacks. Every useful practice begins in the present moment because the present is the only place where choice exists. No future version of yourself can perform today's act of self-command. No imagined circumstance can replace the decision that waits before you now. When this day ends, let it not be remembered as another day spent arguing with reality. Let it become the day you reclaimed the government of your own mind. Accept only what truly belongs to you. Guard your judgments with vigilance. Direct your actions with integrity. Release everything that never depended upon your permission. In doing so, you will discover that freedom was never hidden in controlling the world around you. It was waiting within the disciplined use of the one thing that has always been entrusted to your care, your own rational choice. Number 3. Govern your thoughts before your thoughts govern your actions. Look at your mind before you look at your circumstances. That is where your life is first made or first ruined, not in the event itself, not in the behavior of other people, not in the weather of the day or the pressure of the hour. Your life begins to take shape in the first thought you allow to stay, the first judgment you accept, the first story you tell yourself without questioning it. Long before your hands move, your mind has already chosen the direction. Long before your mouth speaks, your inner voice has already given the order. If that voice is careless, then your life becomes careless. If that voice is governed by reason, then your life begins to obey a higher law than impulse. Most people believe their actions are caused by the world around them. They say they reacted because someone offended them. They say they failed because the day was difficult. They say they gave in because pressure was too strong. But this is how a man hides from his own ruling power. The world presents impressions. Your mind decides what those impressions mean. That decision is the beginning of either freedom or slavery. A harsh word may arrive from another person. That is not yet your suffering. Suffering begins when your mind adds insult to the word and then calls that addition truth. A delay may interrupt your plans. That is not yet your ruin. Ruin begins when your mind declares the delay unbearable and then starts feeding anger, panic, or despair. In every case, the first wound comes from judgment. You must therefore train yourself to stop treating every thought as if it deserves obedience. A thought appears. That does not make it wise. A feeling rises. That does not make it just. An impulse urges action. That does not make it fit to rule. The mind is always producing movements. Some are useful, some are false, some are weak, some are born from fear, some are born from habit. Your task is not to suppress the mind into silence, but to bring it under examination. Ask of every thought what it is, where it came from, and whether it serves virtue. If it cannot pass this test, then it has no right to direct your conduct. The undisciplined person lives as if the first thought were a command from nature. He feels slighted and becomes angry. He feels uncertain and becomes anxious. He feels desire and becomes restless. He feels discomfort and becomes lazy. Then he calls these reactions himself, as if he had chosen them. He has not chosen them. He has repeated them. There is a difference. Repetition is not freedom. Habit is not wisdom. If you keep obeying the same internal noise, you will continue to call it personality when it is only unexamined weakness. You are not condemned to remain what your mind has practiced, but you are responsible for practicing something better. Begin each day before the noise begins. Do not rush into the day already conquered by the first flood of impressions. Sit still for a few moments and make your mind answer to reason before it answers to the world. Ask yourself what kinds of thoughts usually overthrow you. Ask where your judgments become careless. Ask which situations ignite you most quickly. Ask what kinds of imagined losses make you surrender your composure. The purpose of this morning discipline is not self-dramatization, it is preparation. A mind that knows its own weak points is less easily surprised. A mind that begins the day by choosing its ruling principle is less likely to be dragged by the first impulse that appears. When a thought enters, do not ask first whether it feels strong. Ask whether it is true. Many false thoughts come with great force. Fear often feels urgent. Anger often feels righteous. Envy often feels reasonable. Self-pity often feels intimate and familiar. Yet familiarity is not truth. Force is not proof. The mind must be taught to stand apart from the feeling it produces. You can observe a thought without becoming its servant. You can notice an impulse without obeying it. You can feel the first wave without consenting to the flood. This pause is small in appearance and immense in consequence. It is the place where a human being becomes free. This is why the examination of impressions is essential. An impression arrives and says, "This is terrible. This is unfair. This is impossible. This is humiliating. This is unbearable." Do not accept the language of the impression before you have inspected it. Ask whether the event is truly terrible or merely inconvenient. Ask whether it is unfair or simply not arranged to your liking. Ask whether it is impossible or only difficult. Ask whether it is humiliating or only unpleasant to your pride. Ask whether it is unbearable or merely uncomfortable to the body and the ego. Many things become less powerful when named truthfully. The mind is often frightened by its own exaggerations. Bring it back to plain speech, and much of the terror will lose its shape. There is another danger as well. The mind can become attached not only to pleasure, but to the drama of distress. Some people are so used to emotional turbulence that calm feels strange to them. They mistake inner agitation for depth. They think if they are not worried, then they are not serious. They think if they are not angry, then they are not principled. They think if they are not fantasizing, then they are not alive. But a mind that is constantly in motion is not necessarily a strong mind. Often it is only an unruled one. Stability is not emptiness. Stability is strength without panic. The disciplined mind can face a hard truth without collapsing into story. It can endure a delay without becoming bitter. It can receive criticism without losing its center. It can act with firmness while remaining inwardly quiet. You must also learn to see how thought becomes action by repetition. A thought repeated enough becomes a mood. A mood repeated enough becomes a habit. A habit repeated enough becomes character. This is why casual self-indulgence is never truly casual. Every time you entertain a false thought, you make it easier to invite again. Every time you dwell on resentment, you give it a room in your house. Every time you feed a complaint, you teach the mind to search for more complaints. Every time you rehearse imagined insults, you train yourself to be easily disturbed. The soul becomes what it practices. Therefore, be careful with what you rehearse in private. Your hidden conversations shape your public life. The remedy is plain and demanding. You must question the thought before it becomes your action, not after, before. If you wait until the action has already started, then the mind is already underway. But if you catch the thought at the beginning, you still have authority. This is where your training matters. When you notice a thought that urges panic, slow down. When you notice a thought that urges blame, pause. When you notice a thought that urges immediate pleasure, hold back. When you notice a thought that urges giving up, challenge it. Say to yourself, is this thought under my control, or is it about something that belongs to chance? If it belongs to chance, then it is not mine to command. If it belongs to my judgment, then it is my duty to correct it. This separation is one of the greatest protections a human being can have. Some things lie within your choice, your intention, your judgment, your willingness to act justly, your ability to endure, your refusal to lie, your restraint, your courage. These are yours. Other things do not. The opinions of other people, the results of your labor, the timing of events, the health of your body beyond what care can influence, the response of fortune, the behavior of those who do not wish to live well. These are not yours. If you place your peace in the second group, you will always be hostage. If you place your peace in the first group, you will have a fortress no one can seize without your consent. You must not confuse care for control. To care for your work is right. To control the outcome is impossible. To care for your relationships is right. To control another person's soul is impossible. To care for your body is right. To control every condition of it is impossible. The wise person gives his full attention to what is entrusted to him and accepts the rest without complaint. This is not surrender, it is order. Confusion is what creates resistance. Reason creates direction. A mind that knows where authority ends no longer wastes strength trying to command the wind. Watch your thoughts, especially in moments of rejection. A rejected person often begins to invent stories. He says he is unwanted. He says he is less valuable. He says he has been exposed. But what has actually happened? Someone did not choose him, that is all. The mind then adds a second event on top of the first and calls it identity. Refuse this habit. The refusal of one person or one opportunity does not determine your worth. Your worth is not measured by reaction from outside. It is measured by the quality of your inner life. Did you remain just? Did you remain restrained? Did you remain truthful? Did you remain steady? These questions matter. The answer to them is under your governance. The same is true of success. When things go well, the mind can become weak in a different way. It may become proud. It may begin to think fortune is a witness to its greatness. It may soften its discipline because it feels secure. But prosperity tests the soul as surely as hardship does. A good outcome can feed arrogance if the mind is not examined. Therefore, do not let victory intoxicate you. Keep the same measure in success that you keep in difficulty. Ask whether you remained moderate. Ask whether you acted with justice. Ask whether your good fortune made you more helpful or merely more impressed with yourself. This too is the government of thought. At some point in the day you will notice a thought arising that is almost invisible because it feels so natural. It may say, I deserve this indulgence. It may say, I cannot face this task. It may say, I have suffered enough to make this exception. It may say, no one will know. It may say, just this once. These thoughts often appear polished and persuasive because they are close to your weakness. Do not trust them because they sound familiar. Familiarity is one of the chief disguises of error. Examine them with strictness. Ask what they are asking from you. Ask whether obeying them will strengthen you or weaken you. Ask whether they lead toward virtue or away from it. Then decide as a rational being rather than a captive of appetite. The more seriously you take your inner speech, the less chaos will enter your life. You cannot live well while your mind speaks carelessly to itself all day. Train the inner voice to be exact, not cruel, exact. Cruelty is not discipline. Exactness is discipline. Say what is true without ornament. This is difficult at first because the mind prefers softer language. It likes to call weakness a pause. It likes to call avoidance a boundary. It likes to call laziness recovery. It likes to call resentment memory. Strip away these disguises. Tell the truth. You are either acting from reason or you are not. You are either serving virtue or you are not. You are either ruling your mind or you are being ruled by it. No other language is necessary. There is power in returning again and again to reason. Reason is not a cold force against life. It is the proper law of a human soul. To live by reason is to live in agreement with your own nature. The body seeks comfort. Reason seeks what is right. The body seeks immediate relief. Reason seeks lasting order. The body seeks applause. Reason seeks integrity. The body fears pain. Reason knows pain is not the highest evil. When you let reason govern thought, you do not become less human. You become more fully human. You stop being dragged by every appetite and begin to act according to what is worthy. You will need to practice this at the smallest scale first. Notice the thought before you send the message. Notice the judgment before you speak the insult. Notice the urge before you buy the thing you do not need. Notice the resentment before it hardens into coldness. Notice the fear before it becomes avoidance. Each small victory trains the soul to believe that thought can be governed, and once the soul believes this, new strength appears. A person who has won small battles internally can face larger ones without panic, because he knows he is not helpless before his own mind. In the evening, review the day with no softness and no drama. Ask which thoughts entered your mind without challenge. Ask which ones you accepted too quickly. Ask where you allowed an untrue judgment to guide an action. Ask where you saw the right thing and delayed it. Ask whether your speech followed reason or merely followed feeling. This nightly inspection is not meant to crush you. It is meant to keep you honest. A man who does not review himself drifts. A man who reviews himself regularly begins to build character on purpose. He does not wait for circumstances to teach him. He teaches himself while time remains. Do not be alarmed if the mind resists correction. It will. The mind clings to what it knows, even when what it knows harms it. That is why practice matters more than intention. Good intentions are common. Enduring correction is rare. The person who truly wants to live well must be willing to be interrupted in his own patterns. He must be willing to call a thought false, even when it feels convenient. He must be willing to let a desire pass unfulfilled when it does not honor reason. He must be willing to appear plain in the eyes of others, if plainness preserves virtue. He must be willing to let the false self die slowly, so that a better one may stand. Your thoughts are the first citizens of your inner republic. If they are undisciplined, then every lower part of you will demand rule. Desire will command, fear will command, anger will command, envy will command. If they are disciplined, then these forces will return to their proper place as servants rather than masters. This is the real work, not to erase thought, but to govern it, not to pretend you never feel disturbed, but to refuse disturbance the right to lead. Not to become empty, but to become ordered. An ordered mind can withstand pressure because it has not surrendered its center. Begin now, not later, not after another week of drifting, now. The next thought that comes to you does not need to be obeyed, it needs to be examined. The next judgment that rises does not need to be trusted, it needs to be tested. The next impulse that appears does not need to become action. It needs to be measured against virtue. This is how a free person lives. He does not wait for the world to become gentle before he becomes wise. He makes wisdom the first rule within himself and lets the world meet him there. There will be many things today you cannot change. Let them be. There will be many thoughts today you should not accept. Reject them. There will be many moments today when reason calls you to pause before acting. Obey it. There will be many chances today to return from distraction to judgment. Use them. If you do this faithfully, the mind will become less noisy, the reactions less careless, the speech less reckless, and the life more aligned with what is best in you. This is not a dream, it is a discipline, and discipline is always available to the person who is willing to begin. Number 4. Reject every judgment that weakens your rational character daily. The greatest danger to your character is not found in the actions of other people. It is found in the judgments you accept without examination. Long before your hands move, long before your voice rises, long before your day changes direction, your mind has already decided what kind of person you will become in that moment. Every action begins as an inner agreement. Every habit begins as a judgment repeated until it no longer feels like a choice. If your judgments are careless, your life will slowly resemble that carelessness. If your judgments are governed by reason, your character will become steady even when your circumstances remain uncertain. Most people imagine they are defeated by events. They speak as though disappointment entered their lives from outside and settled there against their will. They point toward difficult people, unexpected losses, delayed plans, or painful memories as the source of their unrest. Yet none of these things possesses the authority to govern your inner life unless you grant it that authority. The event arrives from outside, the judgment is formed within. It is this second movement that determines whether your mind remains free or becomes disturbed. This is why your first responsibility every day is not to manage the world, but to manage your interpretation of it. Reality presents facts. Your reason must determine what those facts deserve. If something pleasant happens, do not immediately call yourself fortunate. If something painful happens, do not immediately call yourself ruined. Both conclusions are premature because neither event has revealed the quality of your own character. The only true measure of the day is whether you responded with wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. Many judgments disguise themselves as obvious truths when they are merely habits of thinking. You may believe that another person's criticism has diminished your worth. You may assume that failure proves you are incapable. You may convince yourself that discomfort is a signal to withdraw. None of these conclusions deserves immediate acceptance. Every judgment should be brought before reason as though it were standing before a careful judge. Ask whether it reflects reality or merely reflects emotion. Ask whether it strengthens your ability to live honorably or weakens your commitment to virtue. The untrained mind rushes toward conclusions because certainty feels comfortable. It would rather possess a quick answer than an honest one. Yet the disciplined mind values accuracy more than speed. It understands that many first impressions are incomplete. They arrive carrying fear, pride, resentment, or desire, hoping to be mistaken for truth. Your task is not to silence every impression, but to refuse automatic agreement. Between what happens and what you decide about what happened stands your freedom. Guard that space carefully because your entire character depends upon it. Begin every morning with a deliberate act of preparation. Before allowing the demands of the day to shape your attention, remind yourself that difficult people may appear, unexpected problems may arise, and carefully arranged plans may fail. This is not pessimism, it is preparation for reality. By expecting that life will present challenges, you remove the surprise that often causes irrational reactions. You enter the day ready to practice virtue rather than demanding perfect conditions before you behave well. As the hours unfold, pay close attention to the language your mind uses. Listen for exaggeration, listen for excuses, listen for quiet attempts to transform inconvenience into catastrophe. A delayed appointment becomes a ruined day only because the mind declares it so. A mistake becomes permanent defeat only because judgment refuses correction. Train yourself to replace dramatic conclusions with careful observation. Describe events exactly as they are, neither adding fear nor subtracting responsibility. One of the strongest daily disciplines is learning to pause before giving any impression your approval. A feeling of anger appears. Pause. A desire for immediate comfort appears. Pause. Anxiety begins describing imagined disasters. Pause. This pause is not hesitation born from weakness. It is deliberate restraint born from wisdom. During that brief moment, ask yourself whether following this judgment would make you more just, more disciplined, more truthful, or more courageous. If the answer is no, then reject it before it becomes action. You will notice that many judgments revolve around matters outside your authority. You wish another person would behave differently. You demand that circumstances unfold according to your preferences. You become distressed because reality refuses to follow your expectations. Return your attention to what genuinely belongs to you. Your honesty belongs to you. Your patience belongs to you. Your willingness to fulfill today's responsibilities belongs to you. These remain available regardless of changing conditions. The more faithfully you care for what is yours, the less power external events possess over your peace. Do not imagine that rejecting false judgments requires perfection. It requires consistency. Some thoughts will still appear carrying fear or resentment. Their arrival is not your failure. Your responsibility begins when they ask for your agreement. You are never required to welcome every visitor into your inner life. Let reason decide which thoughts deserve to remain and which should quietly depart. Throughout the day, choose moments to examine yourself rather than examining everyone else. Ask whether your own conduct reflects the principles you claim to admire. It is easy to notice another person's impatience while overlooking your own irritation. It is easy to criticize another person's dishonesty while excusing your own convenient exaggerations. Character grows through self-correction, not through constant observation of the faults of others. There will be occasions when your judgment fails. You may speak too quickly, become attached to an outcome, or surrender your composure. When this happens, resist the temptation to defend yourself with explanations. Honest correction strengthens character far more than comfortable excuses. Admit the mistake without condemning yourself. Study it carefully. Discover which judgment led you away from reason. Then resolve not merely to regret it, but to replace it with a better judgment the next time a similar situation appears. As evening arrives, spend a few quiet moments reviewing the movements of your own mind. Recall the situations that challenged your discipline. Ask which judgments deserved rejection but received your agreement. Ask which moments revealed genuine progress. This practice is not intended to produce guilt. Its purpose is refinement. A craftsman improves his work by carefully examining each flaw. The disciplined person improves character through the same patient attention. Gradually, you will discover that your greatest victories occur silently. No audience applauds the moment you refuse resentment. No celebration follows the instant you replace irritation with patience. Yet these unseen decisions shape a stronger life than public achievements ever could. Each rejected false judgment removes another stone from the prison built by careless thinking. Each accepted rational judgment strengthens the foundation of lasting freedom. Remember that your rational character is your greatest possession. Wealth can disappear. Reputation can change overnight. Health may weaken with time. Even cherished relationships cannot escape the changes brought by life. Yet your commitment to wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control remains available as long as you continue choosing it. Protect this inner authority above every external possession because everything else depends upon it. Do not leave today's practice for another season of life. Your next judgment is already approaching. Meet it with attention instead of habit. Examine it before accepting it. Measure it against reason before allowing it to become action. If it weakens your character, reject it without hesitation. If it strengthens your ability to live with virtue, embrace it with quiet determination. A life governed in this way becomes steady not because fortune has become kinder, but because the mind has learned to recognize that nothing deserves authority over it except reason itself. Number 5. Strengthen your discipline through consistent choices guided by virtue. Discipline is not revealed in the rare moments when life demands extraordinary courage. It is revealed in the ordinary choices that almost no one notices. Every morning you are presented with dozens of opportunities to strengthen or weaken your character. The decision to rise when comfort invites delay. The decision to speak truth when convenience offers an easier path. The decision to complete a responsibility without searching for recognition. These moments appear small because they are familiar, yet they quietly determine the direction of an entire life. Many people search for one decisive event that will transform them forever. They imagine that lasting change arrives through a single moment of inspiration. They wait for unusual motivation, perfect circumstances, or overwhelming confidence before committing themselves to a better way of living. This expectation keeps them trapped because it places discipline in the future rather than in the present. A well-governed life is not created by dramatic beginnings. It is created by repeated decisions that consistently agree with reason. Each choice teaches your mind what kind of person you are becoming. When you repeatedly surrender to convenience, your character learns that comfort deserves authority. When you repeatedly choose what is honorable despite difficulty, your character learns that virtue occupies the highest place. The soul is always receiving instruction from your conduct. Whether you intend it or not, every action becomes part of your education. The greatest mistake is believing that one exception carries little importance. The mind easily whispers that a single careless decision cannot matter, yet every exception quietly establishes a pattern. Each unnecessary compromise lowers the standard you expect from yourself. Soon the unusual becomes familiar, and the familiar becomes your character. This is why consistency deserves greater respect than intensity. Great effort performed once cannot replace faithful discipline practiced daily. Begin each morning by deciding which principles will govern your conduct before circumstances begin testing them. Do not ask what you hope to achieve. Ask who you intend to be. Resolve to act with honesty, even if deception appears profitable. Resolve to practice patience, even if others become impatient. Resolve to maintain moderation, even when excess seems attractive. Resolve to remain just, even when unfair treatment tempts retaliation. By choosing these principles before the day unfolds, you reduce the influence of sudden impulse. As each situation appears, examine it through the measure of virtue rather than personal preference. Ask whether your next action reflects wisdom or merely satisfies desire. Ask whether your words contribute to justice or simply defend pride. Ask whether your silence protects peace or avoids necessary responsibility. Every important decision becomes clearer when measured against character instead of comfort. You will discover that discipline depends less upon emotional strength than upon clear judgment. Feelings change throughout the day, determination rises and falls, circumstances become favorable and then difficult again. If your conduct depends entirely upon emotional energy, your principles will constantly shift. Instead, anchor your choices to reason. A rational decision remains sound, whether enthusiasm is present or absent. Do not become discouraged when disciplined living feels demanding. Difficulty is not evidence that you have chosen the wrong path. Often it reveals that long-established habits are losing their influence. The mind naturally resists correction because familiar patterns create the illusion of safety. Continue choosing wisely despite that resistance. Every faithful decision weakens the authority of old habits and strengthens the authority of reason. Pay careful attention to the moments that seem too insignificant to matter. returning a message with honesty, completing a task without delay, listening fully before answering, speaking calmly when irritation seeks expression, putting aside unnecessary distraction in order to fulfill present responsibilities. These choices rarely receive admiration, yet they gradually establish a stable character capable of meeting far greater challenges. The disciplined person does not divide life into important moments and unimportant ones. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice virtue. Waiting in traffic becomes an exercise in patience. Receiving criticism becomes an opportunity for humility. Facing disappointment becomes training in endurance. Success becomes a chance to practice moderation rather than pride. Nothing is wasted because every circumstance provides material for strengthening character. Throughout the day, remember the difference between what belongs to your authority and what never will. You cannot command another person's opinions, but you can govern your own speech. You cannot guarantee the outcome of honest effort, but you can guarantee that your effort remains honorable. You cannot remove every obstacle, but you can refuse to abandon integrity because obstacles appear. This distinction protects discipline from becoming dependent upon favorable conditions. When failure occurs, resist the temptation to judge yourself by a single mistake. Instead, examine the judgment that produced it. Discover where reason was replaced by impulse, or where comfort was chosen above virtue. Correction begins with understanding. Once the error is seen clearly, the next opportunity becomes another chance to choose differently. A disciplined person does not pretend never to stumble. He refuses to remain where he has fallen. As evening approaches, review the day with complete honesty. Ask whether your decisions reflected the values you claimed to hold in the morning. Notice where consistency remained firm and where it weakened. Give yourself neither empty praise nor unnecessary condemnation. Accept the truth exactly as it is. Gratitude for progress and determination to improve can exist together without conflict. Remember that discipline is not an achievement you eventually possess forever. It is a daily relationship between reason and action. Each sunrise renews the opportunity to strengthen that relationship. Each choice either confirms your commitment to virtue or invites correction. Your future character is not waiting somewhere ahead. It is being formed by the decision immediately before you. If you wish to become steadfast, do not search for extraordinary methods. Search for unwavering consistency. Let every decision be guided by wisdom instead of impulse, by justice instead of resentment, by moderation instead of excess, and by courage instead of avoidance. A life shaped in this manner does not become admirable because it escapes difficulty. It becomes admirable because every difficulty is met by a person who has patiently trained themselves to choose what is right again and again until virtue becomes the natural expression of their character. Number 6. End every complaint and embrace necessary hardship with dignity. Listen carefully to the words that leave your mouth throughout a single day. They reveal the condition of your inner life more clearly than your ambitions ever will. Every complaint is more than a sentence. It is a judgment about reality. It quietly declares that life should have unfolded differently before you were willing to act with composure. The moment you believe your peace depends upon circumstances becoming more agreeable, you have surrendered your freedom to forces that were never yours to command. Hardship is not the enemy of character. More often, it is the place where character is revealed. Comfort rarely asks you to examine yourself. Ease seldom exposes hidden weakness. Difficulty does both without asking permission. It uncovers impatience, pride, fear, attachment, and resentment. These qualities were already present. Hardship simply brings them into the light where they can no longer remain hidden beneath pleasant conditions. Many people believe they complain because life is difficult. The opposite is often closer to the truth. Life becomes heavier because the mind keeps resisting what has already occurred. One burden comes from the event itself. A second burden is added by insisting the event should not exist. The first burden may be unavoidable. The second is created within. A disciplined mind refuses to carry unnecessary weight. This does not mean pretending that pain is pleasant. It does not require denying loss, illness, disappointment, or uncertainty. Wisdom never asks you to abandon reality. Instead, it asks you to meet reality without adding false judgments that multiply suffering. There is dignity in acknowledging that something is difficult while refusing to let difficulty become an excuse for abandoning virtue. Begin each morning by reminding yourself that the day will almost certainly interrupt your expectations. Plans may change without warning. People may disappoint you. Fatigue may arrive unexpectedly. Opportunities may disappear before you reach them. None of these possibilities should surprise a prepared mind. When you expect life to contain resistance, you stop treating every obstacle as a personal injustice. You begin treating each challenge as another opportunity to exercise patience, moderation, courage, and wisdom. As the day unfolds, notice how quickly complaint attempts to disguise itself as reasonable conversation. It often begins with harmless words. You describe the weather, the traffic, the delay, the inconvenience, or another person's behavior. Yet beneath those words sits a hidden demand that reality should arrange itself according to your preferences. The disciplined person recognizes this tendency immediately. Instead of feeding it with repeated speech, they return attention to the one question that matters. What is the most honorable response available now? Complaint rarely improves judgment. More often, it narrows attention until the mind can see nothing except what it dislikes. Gratitude disappears, clarity weakens, solutions become invisible because resentment occupies the space where reason should stand. Every unnecessary complaint strengthens the habit of depending upon favorable circumstances for emotional stability. Every refusal to complain strengthens the habit of depending upon virtue instead. You possess far greater influence over your response than over the events provoking it. Another person's impatience does not force you to become impatient. Unexpected difficulty does not compel you to abandon honesty. Physical discomfort cannot remove your ability to remain fair, measured, or truthful. Your rational faculty remains available in every circumstance unless you voluntarily surrender it. This is the foundation of genuine freedom. Throughout the day, practice replacing complaint with observation. Instead of saying the situation is unbearable, describe it accurately. Instead of declaring that everything has gone wrong, identify the single challenge before you. Precise thinking prevents emotional exaggeration. Once exaggeration disappears, the mind becomes capable of useful action again. There is also value in willingly accepting small forms of discomfort before life imposes greater ones. Choose simplicity when luxury is available. Perform necessary work without waiting for perfect motivation. Allow yourself to experience inconvenience without rushing to escape it. These quiet exercises remind the mind that comfort is welcome, but never required for living well. A person who practices voluntary restraint becomes less vulnerable when unavoidable hardship eventually arrives. Pay close attention to moments when pride turns ordinary setbacks into personal insults. Sometimes the greatest source of suffering is not the event itself, but the wounded image you carry of yourself. Release the demand that every experience confirm your importance. Let your concern be whether your conduct remains worthy, rather than whether circumstances remain favorable. When another person behaves poorly, remember that their choices belong to them. Your responsibility begins where theirs ends. You cannot govern another person's judgment, but you can refuse to imitate it. Meeting anger with anger doubles confusion. Meeting carelessness with steadiness preserves your own character regardless of what another person chooses. As evening approaches, examine not only what happened during the day but how you interpreted it. Ask yourself where complaint entered your thinking before it entered your speech. Notice which situations tempted you to believe that external conditions possessed authority over your peace. Then ask how reason could respond differently tomorrow. Honest reflection transforms experience into instruction. The disciplined life is not measured by the absence of hardship. It is measured by the quality of conduct displayed while hardship is present. Anyone can remain calm when circumstances cooperate. The greater achievement is remaining just when treated unfairly, patient when delayed, moderate when tempted, and courageous when afraid. These qualities cannot be borrowed from favorable conditions. They must be cultivated within. Remember that each challenge arrives carrying two possibilities. One path leads toward resentment, complaint, and increasing dependence upon circumstances. The other leads toward greater clarity, stronger character, and deeper freedom. The event itself does not decide which path you follow. Your judgment does. Leave today with a simple resolution. Let no unnecessary complaint escape your lips without first examining the judgment beneath it. Let every difficulty become an invitation to strengthen reason rather than weaken it. Welcome neither suffering nor comfort as masters. Welcome only the opportunity each moment provides to act with integrity. When hardship is met with dignity instead of resistance, it loses the power to diminish your character and becomes another teacher guiding you toward a steadier and more disciplined life. Number 7. Examine your conduct every evening with fearless, honest reflection. When the world grows quiet and the demands of the day finally release their grip on your attention, there is still one place that remains active: your mind. Most people use the end of the day for escape. They reach for distraction, noise, or sleep without reflection. In doing so, they abandon the only practice that can turn experience into wisdom. A life unexamined is not simply unfinished, it is repeated without correction. The same mistakes return in different forms because nothing was ever truly seen with honesty. You must learn to face yourself at the end of each day without disguise. Not the version of yourself you present to others, not the version you wish you were, the version that actually acted, spoke, judged, reacted, avoided, and chose. That version is the only one that matters in the work of self-governance. Everything else is image. Character is revealed in conduct, not intention, and conduct must be reviewed if it is to improve. Begin by removing all softness from your judgment. Do not treat your own mind as if it requires protection from truth. The mind does not become stronger through comfort. It becomes stronger through clarity. Ask yourself what you did with the hours you were given, not in vague summary, but in precise examination. Where did you act with reason, and where did you surrender to impulse? Where did you choose patience, and where did you allow irritation to speak in your place? Where did you uphold what is right, and where did convenience guide your actions instead? You will notice quickly that the mind resists this process. It prefers a blurred account of the day. It prefers general statements like "it went fine" or "it was a difficult day." These statements protect you from accountability, but they also block transformation. A mind that refuses detail cannot correct itself because it does not see clearly what must change. Reflection must be exact. The sharper the honesty, the clearer the path forward becomes. Look at your judgments throughout the day. Every action begins in judgment. You did not react to events themselves. You reacted to what you believed those events meant. Someone spoke and you interpreted insult. A task appeared and you interpreted burden. A delay occurred and you interpreted injustice. A desire arose and you interpreted necessity. These interpretations were not forced upon you, they were accepted without examination. In the evening review, you must bring these judgments back into the light and ask whether they deserved authority. There is a great difference between what happens and what you say about what happens. Most suffering is created in the second space. The event is neutral until the mind assigns meaning. A disciplined evening practice exposes those meanings and tests whether they were rational or reactive. If they were reactive, you must acknowledge that clearly, not with shame, but with precision. Shame clouds understanding. Precision sharpens it. Now examine your speech. Words reveal the state of the inner world more clearly than thoughts that remain unspoken. Where did you exaggerate today? Where did you speak without full knowledge? Where did you complain instead of observing? Where did you defend your ego instead of speaking truth? Each careless word is a signal of an ungoverned judgment. Do not excuse it. Study it. Every mistake becomes useful only when it is clearly seen. Then turn to your actions. Ask whether your behavior aligned with the principles you claim to respect. It is easy to believe you value discipline while repeatedly choosing comfort. It is easy to believe you value honesty while allowing small distortions when convenient. It is easy to believe you value patience while reacting sharply under pressure. The evening review strips away these illusions. It replaces self-image with actual conduct. Only what you did matters here, not what you intended. There will be moments when you discover failure. You avoided something important. You gave in to impulse. You wasted time that could have been used more wisely. Do not allow your mind to turn these discoveries into self-punishment. That reaction is another form of avoidance. It replaces correction with emotional collapse. Instead, remain steady and factual. Name the error. Identify the judgment that led to it. Understand the moment where reason was replaced by impulse. Then release the error into understanding rather than regret. The purpose of this reflection is not to weaken you. It is to strengthen your ability to choose better tomorrow. A person who does not examine his conduct remains the same person indefinitely. A person who examines his conduct becomes slightly more precise each day. Over time, this accumulation of small corrections produces a mind that is far less reactive and far more deliberate. You must also observe where you succeeded, not to inflate pride, but to reinforce clarity. Where did you act in alignment with reason despite difficulty? Where did you restrain impulse when it would have been easier to indulge it? Where did you speak with fairness when anger would have been simpler? These moments matter because they show you that discipline is already possible within you. They are evidence that you are not ruled entirely by habit. Now consider your attention. Where did your mind wander unnecessarily today? What thoughts repeated without purpose? What worries occupied space without producing action? Much of mental exhaustion comes not from events but from unexamined mental activity. In the evening review, you bring attention back to its proper function. You see where it drifted and gently return it to order. This is training, not punishment. You must also examine your relationship with what is outside your control. Where did you become disturbed by things you could not influence? Where did you treat external events as if they had authority over your inner stability? Each instance reveals a misunderstanding of power. True control never lies in outcomes, it lies in judgment and response. Every evening, you correct this misunderstanding by separating what depended on you from what did not. There is a quiet strength that develops from this practice. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It simply becomes noticeable in how you meet the next day. A person who reflects honestly becomes less surprised by his own behavior. He begins to recognize patterns before they fully form. He interrupts errors earlier. He returns to reason faster. This is how character is reshaped without force. As the practice deepens, you will begin to see that most internal struggle comes from unexamined repetition. The same judgments produce the same reactions. The same reactions produce the same dissatisfaction. Without reflection, this cycle continues unnoticed. Evening examination breaks the cycle by inserting awareness between action and identity. You are no longer simply what you did. You become someone who observes what you did and chooses differently. Do not rush this process. The value lies in consistency rather than intensity. A brief but honest review every night is more powerful than occasional deep reflection followed by long periods of neglect. Discipline grows through repetition of clarity, not occasional insight. Before sleep, close the day with final honesty. Ask one simple question. Did I live according to reason today, or did I drift into impulse? Let the answer be direct. If you drifted, acknowledge it and prepare correction. If you remain steady, acknowledge that as well, without exaggeration. Then release the day. There is nothing more to extract from it once understanding has been gained. In time, this practice becomes a quiet form of self-governance. You no longer wait for external consequences to teach you. You teach yourself in advance. You no longer rely on regret to change behavior. You rely on awareness. You no longer move blindly through repetition. You move with increasing clarity. The day does not end when your tasks are finished. It ends when your understanding of yourself has been refined. Without that refinement, the same errors return under different names. With it, even ordinary days become training grounds for strength. So sit with yourself at night, without distraction and without avoidance. Look directly at your conduct. See it as it is. Learn from it without distortion. Then let it go. The mind that is willing to face itself without fear becomes increasingly difficult to disturb. Not because life becomes easier, but because the inner judge has finally learned to speak with truth instead of illusion. Number 8. Master your desires before they quietly master your entire life. Desire is not always loud when it begins its rule over your life. It often enters quietly, disguised as preference, disguised as need, disguised as something reasonable and harmless. You tell yourself you simply want comfort, recognition, pleasure, approval, or escape. Yet every uncontrolled desire begins the same way. It presents itself as innocent before it becomes commanding. If you do not examine it at the beginning, it will eventually examine you through the consequences it produces in your behavior, your choices, and your character. Most people believe they are free because they can name what they want. But naming a desire is not freedom. Freedom is the ability to question whether the desire deserves obedience. A person ruled by desire still feels in control because the mind agrees with what the desire asks for. It does not feel like slavery when the master speaks in your own voice. Yet the absence of resistance is not freedom. It is surrender disguised as preference. You must learn to observe desire before you act upon it. This requires a kind of honesty that does not flatter your impulses. When a desire appears, do not ask immediately how to satisfy it. Ask instead what it will do to your character if it is followed without restraint. Ask whether it strengthens your rational nature or weakens it. Ask whether it moves you closer to disciplined action or toward dependence on external pleasure. This moment of questioning is where mastery begins. Desires often grow stronger when they are not examined. The mind tends to justify what it repeatedly indulges. A small indulgence becomes a habit. A habit becomes expectation. Expectation becomes dependency. What began as choice becomes pressure. At that point, the mind no longer asks whether it should act. It only asks how quickly it can satisfy what it now feels compelled to pursue. This is how inner freedom is quietly replaced by internal compulsion. You may notice that many of your strongest desires are not truly necessary for your survival or your moral development. They are often tied to comfort, recognition, or avoidance of discomfort. Yet the rational part of you was not given to serve comfort. It was given to discern what is appropriate, what is just, what is disciplined, and what aligns with your nature as a reasoning being. When desire takes control, it reverses this order. It places comfort above judgment and impulse above reflection. Begin each morning by setting the tone of restraint rather than pursuit. Do not wake up immediately asking what you can gain from the day. Ask what you may need to refuse in order to remain steady. There will be desires that arise throughout the day that appear urgent but are not essential. If you prepare your mind in advance, you are less likely to be surprised by them. A prepared mind is not one that eliminates desire, but one that refuses automatic obedience to it. When desire appears, pause before acting. This pause is where discipline exists. In that moment, you are no longer purely reactive, you are capable of judgment. Ask whether fulfilling this desire will leave you stronger or weaker in your ability to govern yourself. Ask whether it will increase your dependence on external things or strengthen your independence through self-command. If the desire leads you away from rational control, then you already have enough information to refuse it. Do not be deceived by the intensity of desire. Strength of feeling does not determine truth. A desire can feel powerful and still be unworthy. Hunger for approval can feel urgent and still be unnecessary. Attraction toward pleasure can feel natural and still be excessive. The task of reason is not to eliminate feeling, but to evaluate it. Without evaluation, feeling becomes authority. With evaluation, feeling becomes information. Many internal struggles come not from the presence of desire, but from the refusal to question it. The mind that never resists its impulses eventually loses the ability to distinguish between what is needed and what is merely wanted. At that stage, everything feels necessary. Every discomfort feels like an emergency. Every delay feels like injustice. This is not reality. It is a mind trained by indulgence to exaggerate its own demands. You must also observe how desire distorts perception of time. It makes immediate satisfaction appear more important than long-term stability. It compresses thinking into the present moment and removes awareness of consequences. A disciplined mind restores this awareness. It asks not only what this desire offers now, but what it will produce later in the structure of your life. Many actions that feel small in the moment shape character far beyond their immediate appearance. Desire is not your enemy, but unexamined desire becomes your ruler. The goal is not to eliminate all wanting, but to ensure that what you want does not govern what you do without reasoned approval. A person who can hold desire without obeying it has far greater strength than a person who is constantly attempting to suppress it. Suppression creates internal conflict. Examination creates clarity. Throughout the day, practice small refusals. Not every desire requires dramatic resistance. Often it is enough to simply not act on it immediately. Delay weakens the illusion of urgency. When a desire loses urgency, it reveals its true size. Many impulses shrink when they are not instantly obeyed. They depend on speed and habit to maintain their influence. Remove speed, and you restore clarity. There will be moments when you fail to govern desire and act without reflection. Do not respond with despair. That reaction itself is another uncontrolled impulse. Instead, examine the moment. Identify what judgment allowed the desire to override reason. Understand the point where discipline weakened. Correction is always more valuable than condemnation. A mind that learns from its failures becomes stronger than one that simply regrets them. You will also notice that some desires are shaped by external influence. What others value begins to appear necessary to you. What society praises begins to feel like personal need. This is how the mind becomes entangled in expectations that are not its own. To regain clarity, regularly ask whether a desire arises from your rational judgment or from imitation. Many desires lose their authority once they are seen as borrowed rather than chosen. In the evening, review your relationship with desire throughout the day. Ask where you followed it without question. Ask where you resisted it with clarity. Ask where it clouded your judgment or narrowed your attention. This reflection is not meant to produce shame, but understanding. Without understanding, the same patterns repeat. With understanding, change becomes possible. As your practice deepens, you begin to notice a shift. Desires do not disappear, but their authority weakens. They become less like commands and more like passing impressions. You are no longer compelled to act immediately upon them. You can observe them, evaluate them, and decide whether they deserve action. This is the beginning of genuine self-governance. A life ruled by desire is unstable because desire is constantly shifting. What satisfies today may feel insufficient tomorrow. What feels urgent in one moment may lose importance in the next. If your behavior is tied to these fluctuations, your character becomes unstable as well. But if your behavior is guided by reason, you create continuity within yourself even as external conditions change. Mastering desire is not an act of denial. It is an act of ordering your life according to what is higher in you rather than what is momentarily strongest in you. Reason must stand above impulse. Judgment must stand above craving. Reflection must stand above reaction. When this order is restored, life becomes less fragmented and more coherent. Every time you choose not to obey an unexamined desire, you strengthen the part of yourself capable of freedom. Every time you obey without question, you weaken it. Over time, these choices accumulate into character. A person is not defined by what they occasionally feel, but by what they consistently choose to follow. So when desire appears, do not rush toward it and do not fear it. Meet it with awareness. Question it with honesty. Decide with reason. If it serves your rational nature, it may be accepted. If it weakens it, it must be refused. In this discipline, you reclaim authority over your own mind, and in doing so, you begin to live not as a servant of impulse, but as a governed and steady rational being. Number 9. Serve others through justice while protecting your inner freedom. You are not separate from other people in the way your impulses suggest. Your mind constantly tries to divide life into me and them, as if your well-being could be built in isolation from the rest of humanity. Yet every day proves the opposite. You depend on others for cooperation, understanding, opportunity, and even simple order. At the same time, you are constantly disturbed by others through judgment, expectation, and reaction. This tension reveals a mistake in thinking. You are treating social life as something that must serve your preferences rather than something that must be guided by reason and justice. Most suffering in relationships does not come from what others do. It comes from how quickly you interpret what they do. A careless word becomes disrespect. A delay becomes neglect. A disagreement becomes hostility. A difference becomes personal threat. These interpretations happen so quickly that they feel automatic. But automatic does not mean accurate. Every judgment you make about another person is a test of your own character. If your judgment is unjust, your mind becomes disturbed. If your judgment is fair, your mind remains steady even in conflict. Justice is not an external rule imposed on your behavior. It is the internal discipline of giving each situation and each person what is appropriate, rather than what your emotion demands in the moment. When anger rises, justice asks whether retaliation is truly necessary or whether calm correction is more fitting. When frustration appears, justice asks whether you are responding to actual harm or merely to inconvenience. When pride is wounded, justice asks whether the situation truly involves wrongdoing or only your expectation being challenged. You must learn to serve others without surrendering your inner stability to their behavior. This is where most people fail. They believe service means emotional absorption into the reactions of others. They become offended when others are ungrateful. They become bitter when others misunderstand them. They become unstable when others behave inconsistently. In doing so, they turn external behavior into internal disturbance. But service guided by reason does not require emotional dependency on the response of others. Begin each morning by reminding yourself that you will encounter people who are impatient, self-centered, confused, or inconsistent. This is not an accusation against them. It is an understanding of human nature. People act according to their own judgments, often without awareness of how their behavior affects others. If you expect perfection from others, you will constantly be disappointed. If you expect imperfection and still choose to act justly, you remain free. When you interact with others, separate what is within your control from what is not. You cannot control whether someone understands you. You cannot control whether they respond fairly. You cannot control whether they recognize your intention. You can only control whether you act with clarity, restraint, and honesty. If you anchor your peace to what others do, you lose authority over your own mind. If you anchor it to your own conduct, you preserve it in every situation. Many conflicts arise because people confuse disagreement with injustice. Someone holds a different view, and the mind immediately interprets this as disrespect. Someone refuses a request, and it is interpreted as rejection. Someone criticizes, and it is interpreted as attack. Yet none of these events automatically contain moral harm. They become harmful only when your judgment adds emotional distortion to them. Justice requires you to distinguish clearly between actual wrongdoing and simple difference. To serve others well, you must also remove the expectation that service will always be recognized or rewarded. If recognition is required for peace, then your peace is not truly yours. It belongs to the response of others. A just action remains just, even when unnoticed. A kind act remains valuable, even when misunderstood. The worth of your conduct is determined by its alignment with reason, not by its reception. At the same time, protecting your inner freedom does not mean withdrawing from responsibility. It means remaining steady while fulfilling it. You are not asked to become indifferent. You are asked to become anchored. There is a difference between caring about others and being controlled by their reactions. One is guided by reason. The other is governed by instability. Throughout the day, observe how quickly emotional reactions attempt to override fairness. When someone speaks harshly, notice the immediate urge to respond in kind. When someone fails to meet expectations, notice the internal impulse to judge their entire character. When misunderstandings arise, notice the desire to defend yourself rather than clarify truth. In each case, there is a brief moment where reason can intervene before reaction becomes action. That moment is where your freedom exists. Practice slowing down your interpretation of events. Instead of immediately assigning meaning to another person's behavior, pause and ask what actually happened without addition. A person spoke, a task was delayed, a request was denied. These are facts. Everything beyond that is interpretation. The more precise your thinking becomes, the less emotional distortion controls your response. You will notice that justice often requires restraint rather than expression. Not every irritation needs to be spoken. Not every disagreement requires immediate correction. Not every emotional response deserves action. Sometimes justice is served by waiting until the mind is clear enough to respond without distortion. Acting from unsettled judgment often creates more disorder than silence would have created. There will be times when others act unjustly toward you. In those moments, your inner freedom is tested most directly. The natural impulse is to match their behavior or to withdraw into resentment. But neither response preserves your character. A steady mind recognizes that another person's wrongdoing does not require your participation in wrongdoing. Your role is to remain aligned with reason, even when others depart from it. You must also examine how often your sense of fairness is influenced by personal preference. It is easy to call something unjust when it disadvantages you. It is harder to see injustice when it benefits you but harms another. Justice requires consistency, not convenience. If your judgment changes depending on outcome, then it is not justice guiding you but preference disguised as principle. As evening arrives, review your interactions. Ask where you responded to others with fairness and where you allowed emotion to distort your judgment. Ask where you served without expectation and where expectation silently influenced your attitude. Ask where you maintained inner stability and where you allowed external behavior to disturb your mind. This reflection is not about condemnation, it is about alignment with reason. You will gradually discover that serving others and preserving inner freedom are not opposing goals. They support each other when properly understood. A mind governed by reason serves more justly because it is not driven by resentment or need for approval. A mind that serves justly remains freer because it is not entangled in emotional dependence on outcomes beyond its control. Over time, your relationships become clearer. You stop reacting to every emotional fluctuation around you. You begin to respond rather than react. You act from principle rather than from impulse. You listen more accurately because you are not preparing your response while others are still speaking. You become more useful to others precisely because you are less controlled by them. Remember that your inner freedom is not preserved by withdrawal from the world but by correct engagement with it. You are meant to act, to contribute, to cooperate, and to participate in human life. But you are meant to do so without surrendering your judgment to external reactions. Justice guides your actions, reason guards your mind. Together they allow you to remain stable while still fully present among others. In every interaction, return to this simple discipline. Act with fairness, speak with clarity, withhold unnecessary reaction, refuse emotional distortion, separate what depends on you from what does not. If you remain faithful to this, you will serve others more effectively while preserving the only part of life that truly belongs to you, your rational capacity to choose rightly, regardless of circumstance. Number 10. Live each day as your final chance for virtue. You move through life as if time is guaranteed to return your attention tomorrow. This assumption is the hidden source of your delay, your hesitation, your half-committed actions, and your repeated postponement of what you already know is right. You speak as if virtue is always available in some future version of the day rather than something demanded in the present moment. But the present moment is the only place where your character actually exists. Everything else is imagination or memory. When you forget the finality of each day, you allow distraction to multiply. You tolerate thoughts that weaken you because you believe there will be time later to correct them. You accept small failures of discipline because you assume you will compensate for them in the future. You postpone clarity, restraint, honesty, and courage as if they were renewable resources that cannot be exhausted. Yet the truth is simpler and more severe. Your character is formed only in the choices you make now, not in the ones you plan to make later. To live each day as your final chance for virtue is not to live in fear, it is to live with precision. It removes the illusion that you can waste the present without consequence. When you believe the day is final in its moral significance, every action gains weight, every judgment becomes more careful, every impulse is examined rather than followed blindly. You stop treating your inner life as something that can be repaired indefinitely and begin treating it as something that must be governed immediately. Most suffering arises from unconscious postponement of responsibility. You tell yourself that you will become more disciplined after conditions improve. You believe you will become more patient once circumstances are easier. You assume you will act more wisely once you feel more prepared. This pattern keeps you in a constant state of waiting. Yet waiting is not neutral. It is the continued reinforcement of habits that already govern you. Each postponed correction becomes another day where impulse, not reason, leads your actions. You must begin each morning with the understanding that nothing external is promised to you. Not outcomes, not comfort, not recognition, not even continuity of opportunity. What remains available is your capacity to choose wisely in the present moment. That capacity is enough for a complete life if it is used fully. A short life governed by reason is complete. A long life governed by distraction is unfinished, regardless of its length. When you act today, do not act as if you are building towards some distant moral version of yourself. Act as if this is the only opportunity you have to align with virtue. Before you speak, examine whether your words reflect honesty or whether they are shaped by desire for approval. Before you react, examine whether your response reflects reason or whether it is driven by emotional impulse. Before you pursue anything, examine whether it strengthens your character or merely satisfies temporary craving. The awareness of finality strips away unnecessary actions. Much of what you do each day is not required by reason but by habit. You repeat behaviors not because they are necessary but because they are familiar. When you remove the assumption of endless time, these habits lose authority. You begin to see how much of your energy is spent on things that do not contribute to the quality of your character. This clarity alone is enough to transform the direction of your life. You will also notice how attachment to outcomes weakens your present conduct. When you believe tomorrow will correct today, you become careless in the present. When you believe future success will compensate for current dishonesty, you tolerate small compromises. But virtue cannot be accumulated through future intention. It exists only in present action. Each moment either reflects it or does not. There is no deferred version of integrity. You must learn to separate what depends on you from what does not with complete seriousness. What depends on you is your judgment, your intention, your discipline, and your willingness to act according to reason. What does not depend on you includes outcomes, external recognition, the behavior of others, and the unfolding of events. If you confuse these categories, you will live in constant frustration. If you keep them distinct, you will preserve inner clarity even when external conditions are unstable. As you move through the day, practice treating each moment as a complete moral test, not in a dramatic sense, but in a precise one. Every situation is an opportunity to either act according to reason or abandon it. There is no neutral position. Even in inaction, you are choosing. Even in delay, you are choosing. Even in silence, you are choosing. The question is always whether that choice aligns with the rational nature you are capable of expressing. You may notice resistance when you attempt to live this way. The mind prefers the comfort of postponement. It prefers to believe that discipline can be applied later with equal effectiveness. It prefers to treat virtue as flexible rather than immediate. This resistance is expected. It is the inertia of habit attempting to preserve itself. Do not argue with it, observe it, and proceed with clarity. Each time you act despite resistance, you weaken its influence. There is also a subtle form of distraction that comes from imagining alternative versions of your life. You think about what could have been different. You speculate about future possibilities. You mentally rehearse outcomes that have not occurred. All of this removes attention from the only place where action is possible. A mind that is divided between what was and what might be becomes less capable of governing what is. Return repeatedly to the present situation and ask what is required now, not what could have been or what might later be. When interacting with others, remember that their behavior does not determine your virtue. You are not responsible for how they act, but you are responsible for how you respond. If someone behaves poorly, your task is not to mirror that behavior, but to remain aligned with reason. If someone behaves well, your task is not to become dependent on their approval, but to remain consistent in your own conduct. In every interaction, your character remains under your authority. At the end of the day, reflect without distortion. Do not soften your examination. Do not exaggerate your failures. Simply observe where you acted in accordance with reason and where you did not. Notice where you lived as if time were infinite and where you acted as if each moment carried moral weight. This reflection is not meant to burden you. It is meant to sharpen your awareness so that tomorrow is approached with greater clarity. You will begin to see that when you live each day as if it were your final chance for virtue, urgency replaces hesitation. Not emotional urgency, but rational urgency. You stop delaying necessary actions. You stop tolerating unnecessary internal conflict. You stop allowing minor impulses to override meaningful intention. Life becomes less scattered and more directed. Eventually, this way of living transforms how you perceive time itself. Each moment becomes sufficient, not because it is easy, but because it is complete when used rightly. You no longer require endless duration to justify meaningful living. A single well-governed moment is enough to express the full capacity of a rational being. Do not wait for clarity to arrive before you act with virtue. Act with virtue and clarity will follow. Do not wait for motivation before you choose discipline. Choose discipline and motivation becomes unnecessary. Do not wait for tomorrow to become better. Use today as the only material available to build a better mind. If you carry this understanding into each day, you will no longer live as someone preparing for a life of virtue. You will live as someone practicing it in real time, and in that practice, without delay or postponement, your life becomes complete in the only sense that matters.